Hello, and welcome into my favorite chapter select at the movies of all time.
Yes, because it's the last one.
It
the
is
final
the last chapter of Resident Evil. We have made it through all 6 with our brains intact. I am Randy. You just heard Jens. Jens, how are you doing, sir?
I'm grand. I am so excited to talk about this. The epic conclusion to a series that we've devoted how many months of our lives to now?
The first episode of this came out December 18th, so over 2 months.
Okay, well, we are going
2.5 months.
A gradual pace.
Yes.
But I would say about 9.5 hours altogether of Resident Evil.
Would sound probably about right. It felt like much more.
Well, it was all worth it. It was all worth it for Paul W.S. Anderson to weave his intricate story strands into a rich tapestry and give us all those payoffs that we've been waiting for, all those characters that have been coming in and out of the series. Yeah. You know, everybody gets a moment to shine, you know, or it's going to all make sense. What am I talking about?
No, absolutely not. None of that is going to happen. And I have to say, I pulled a U on this one.
Yeah.
Where I'm pretty sure I either fell asleep or just my brain turned off. And then all of a sudden, it refocused. And I went, oh, God, I missed like a half hour of this movie. What is happening? I missed 2 minutes. And within 2 minutes, I had no clue what was happening anymore.
Yes. And from the very beginning, it's funny, we're going to make this movie sound like it's complex and you have to really pay attention. But the only reason you have to really pay attention is there are just things that are blink and you miss them.
Yes.
And it's stuff like explanations to what happened at the end of the last movie. That if you miss that one sentence that Alice says in the prologue when she recaps the entire story so far, you're just left wondering what? Wait, that's not what happened. So the last movie, right? It ended with the prelude to the final battle. We're at the White House. There's a giant wall defending it, and on the other side of that wall, an unspeakable and seemingly endless army of zombies and mutants and flying beasts. And on the roof, we have the little girl that Alice spent the whole movie saving. We've got Jill Valentine. We've got Wesker, who she's now on the side of. He's given her powers back. And the Red Queen wants to destroy humanity, and here we go.
And then after 27 minutes of recap, none of that happened.
It was a trap.
It was such a trap we didn't see the trap.
Yeah, that's all. It's funny because, is this the longest? My name is Alice.
Yes.
Bloody, bloody, blah.
100%. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and just at the very end of it, it's just and then Wesker lured me into a trap. And I guess the trap didn't matter because we resume post-trap with just kind of the remains of the White House in a big empty field of battle. And all of the characters that Alice was with at the end of the last movie are gone.
And not only that, so there were hundreds of thousands of zombies, like you were saying, surrounding this White House. They're showing the aftermath of this so-called battle. There's not a single body.
So here's my question to you. Can you hypothesize on this with me?
Let's do it.
When Paul W.S. Anderson was writing the end of the last movie, do you think he was being genuine when he thought, oh, I'm setting up a cool thing for the next movie, and then in between that movie and this movie, he changed his mind on what he wanted to do with it, and just kind of hastily retconned that aspect of it?
I'm so mixed on this.
Okay. Or do you think this was his... I just can't...
So
the way he sets it up, it's so lazy that... If it was always meant to be a trap, the fact that Alice did not grok that it was a trap is insane.
But the fact that we didn't see it makes it seem like his plan that he originally had is obviously not where he went. It's just whether I'm still undecided whether it was Paul W.S. Anderson retconning himself again in this series, which I think I'm leaning on. 2, he didn't get enough money to be able to spend on this ridiculous battle that he built up. Or 3, all of the actresses that were supposed to be a part of this final battle didn't make it or did not want to do the last movie. Because obviously we don't have Jill in this. We don't have the little girl in this. We have another Red Queen.
Yep. I think that's very interesting to me that the random phasing in and out of characters from film to film, where it's like, okay, Jill is in some movies and Claire is in some movies, but they're never really in a movie together. I guess they are kind of in 5.
Well, it also kind of shows, because I remember reading, like, way back, again, I didn't watch these last 2 movies, but I remember seeing a lot of stuff that they were going to record the final 2 movies back to back, kind of like what The Lord of the Rings did.
Oh, yeah. That would have been
And then it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of messed everything up. I don't think it is. Well, other than every time we do one of these reviews, I always go on Wikipedia to look to make sure I get names right. And they always have the budget and the box office. I still don't understand. All 6 of these movies were box office smashes across the world. Huge. This one alone, $312 million in the box office. It only had a $40 million budget. What did Paul W.S. Anderson have to do to get a real budget? Because he crushed his budget every single time. And still, here you are in the final chapter. He set up this giant battle, and he gets $40 million to make his movie.
I mean, that's just kind of how he operates.
So that was all he was asking for, is what you think?
I don't know how the financing works. It's Constantine Film, isn't it? So it's usually kind of like a collection of European investors behind this stuff. It's hard to say.
Obviously, a different time and place, because this movie came out in 2017. I just looked up Fast and the Furious 8. Because that's what I keep referencing, the Furious movies with Resident Evil, because they have this in and out going characters. And
I'm thinking it might be like a profit sharing kind of situation where actually,
but I was just looking.
You are going to recoup, like you're recouping more of the difference because of the way of the financing. It might be a situation where you can actually just, well, if we keep the financing at this level and the profit sharing at that level, we're going to get a much bigger chunk of those $300 million or whatever than we would have if we went to a major studio and we made this $100 million movie.
And honestly, it could just be, we're only spending this much every movie and people are watching anyways.
Yes, that's also exactly why change a winning formula.
But anyways, I was looking at Fast 8. They had a budget of $250 million.
Yes.
Again, a few years later, and a much bigger box office thing. But do you want to know what the box office was for the last Fast and the Furious movie?
What was it?
Just guess. Budget of $250 million.
$800 million.
$1.2 billion, according to Wikipedia. That is insane to me.
Yeah, it was a different time then. The next time they make a Resident Evil movie, they're going to have to do something that's either...
It's this year, unless it gets delayed. It's the next Resident Evil movie, which obviously will be its own thing, is scheduled to come out this year.
The smart thing to do would be to do something that's like super low key, almost like a Quiet Place kind of modest budget. Just do a proper horror movie.
Just do The Mansion.
Well, I mean, if you just focus on quality and not on spectacle, because Paul W.S. Anderson, he kind of focuses on spectacle, but he's not that good at spectacle. I actually think that this movie has some of the worst edited action scenes in the entire series, but at least he's done completely away with the 3D. That's one positive. He's moved away entirely from the slow-mo and from the kind of 3D gimmickry.
Yeah, I'm with you though as far as the fight scenes. He got busy again.
Well, there's a million cuts. It's the thing.
It's really rough.
So
where do we want to start? Do we want to start fight scenes? Do you want to start story? There's so many places to go.
Okay.
By the way, the next Resident Evil movie is still a Constantine film. I just looked it up.
Okay.
Directed by Jonas Roberts, whoever that is.
Yeah, so it's once again... I blame the Germans. I blame my fellow Germans for a lot of bad video game movies. It's not just Uwe Boll. I think Paul W.S. Anderson also has kind of, put his toes into German financing and the way that German financing works, where basically if the movie fails, or at least at the time, if the movie fails, you can maybe write off your losses on your taxes.
Right.
Because you're subsidizing the German film industry. That was the racket for a long time. So... Anyway, same. I guess the rights are still just in the same hands, but hopefully they're just put better creators on it. That's really what you need, right? You need the quality people behind the camera to make the right decisions. And,
all you have to do is look at Star Wars for that. Yeah.
Now, this movie, the way it is cut, there are scenes where, like, this needs an epilepsy warning. People were outraged over Cyberpunk. Like, why was there no epilepsy outrage over this? So
joke.
I want to talk about the story because the story is where it all falls apart, right? So after
100%.
we retcon, after, we yada, 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 the big battle that this movie is supposed to start with, Alice is kind of lone survivor again and traveling around the post-apocalypse.
Well, hold on. So I want to get to something because we talked about it off air. Because you watched it a day or two before I did, and then we were talking while I watched.
Sure.
You were talking about retconning the big battle. You were upset because they retconned something else when they were doing the recap, and that was now it's Dr. James Marcus's daughter who the Red Queen was put after instead of now I'm going to blank out his name.
No, I can't think of him.
Ashford, Dr. Ashford.
Yeah,
in the
Jared
second movie.
Harris's character, Dr. Ashford. Yes,
in the second
the
movie,
fellow in the wheelchair,
yes.
from who you may remember from the show Chernobyl and the show Mad Men. Very fine actor, son of actor Richard Harris. Yep, all the Jared Harris suddenly flooded back into my brain. So yeah, he was originally the dad, whose daughter the Red Queen was based on, and it was the same actress. And now it's Dr. Marcus, and also Dr. Marcus was kind of working with Dr. Isaacs the whole time, and Dr. Isaacs takes his daughter from him. And there's all this stuff where this movie, it doesn't stop there. This whole movie is just full of flashbacks to stuff that never happened.
Right. Well, so I this is why I wanted to bring it up. I messaged you because I like this scene, other than the fact that once again it retconned something from a previous movie. But I was just really happy to see Dr. Marcus get mentioned at all in the movie series in basically the same way that happens in the video games, because he basically becomes the big baddie in Resident Evil 0 after he gets outcasted by Wesker and the other doctors when he doesn't want to go the same direction they want to go. So I was happy that they went that route, but I'm with you that we already had the Red Queen origin story. We didn't have to do it again. I
just don't know, but in a series where there's supposed to be continuity, to just randomly rewrite a part of the backstory again for seemingly no reason. I mean, it doesn't really add that much other than I guess we couldn't get Jared Harris back. Or maybe Paul W.S. Anderson forgot about what happened in the second movie since he didn't even direct it.
Jared Harris died. I mean, since you want to do that as a flashback, I get that. But,
yeah. If you wanted to expand on stuff that happened in the past.
If you look at the cast in this last movie, he couldn't get anyone back. He talked them all to come back in the fifth movie, and they went, okay, never mind.
That's not true. He got Claire back.
Yeah.
Ellie Larder is back as Claire. And that was a welcome. But again, it was so funny because Claire just kind of disappears in the last movie.
She disappears in the last movie, comes back.
And now she's just kind of back with a new group of survivors.
She has a new love and has forgotten her brother again.
Right.
They never said Chris's name one time. Alice is like,
Chris.
Claire, I'm so glad to see you. Not one, where'd Chris go?
Yeah, what happened? They could have even had a sentence of, he's doing something else in Antarctica or whatever.
Yeah, Chris is helping a group in Las Vegas or something.
Yeah, he's digging, he's unearthing Las Vegas, cleaning up all the sand.
Right. He wants to open a new casino.
Exactly. So the Red Queen. Let's talk about the Red Queen. The Red Queen in this movie, firstly, it's basically a new Red Queen. You said it was a different Red Queen, like there's multiple queens, and that made me remember.
That was a joke. It was okay. More of I was trying to help Paul out by going, there's just, this is Red Queen version 6. They keep upgrading the OS.
That did remind me that there was one of these movies where there was a white queen, and it was a different actress, and it was based off a different child.
And that's where I was thinking it was when we were having that conversation. But then later, I forget who.
Later in the movie, they tell you that it's the same Red Queen from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They connected, and she's it's funny because at the end of the last movie, Wesker basically tells Alice, the Red Queen is evil. She wants to destroy humanity. You've got to work with me against a common enemy. This movie starts, we say, Wesker was full of shit. And actually, Alice then talks to the Red Queen, and the Red Queen tells her a bunch of stuff and about how she's actually working against Wesker to save humanity, and that Alice should work with the Red Queen against Wesker, because Wesker is the real big bad. Then later, we see Wesker, Dr. Isaacs, and the Red Queen all talking to each other together in a room scheming.
Right. So
and then towards the end of the movie, you realize that actually, the Red Queen was on Alice's side, and it's Dr. Isaac who's the real villain. And Wesker doesn't even freaking matter. Wesker gets the most punk-ass death imaginable.
It's so sad for the best villain in Resident Evil series history. I won't even get into that yet. But hold on.
They can't make up their mind.
I have a big question for you.
Uh-huh.
What do you think Paul W.S. Anderson's idea was when he decided that the whole thing with Wesker was that Wesker was going to turn on Alice? So again, he's just retconning things and changing his mind every movie. But the entire fifth movie is Albert Wesker using Ada Wong to free Alice to get her help against the Red Queen. Just for the moment that they get back together, he turns on her in some fashion we don't see on air, basically to just get rid of the other two female characters because they didn't make it. And I think Ada was on that roof too. And
well, yeah, that's right. Ada Wong also just kind of written out.
And so she's written out, and she was with Wesker the whole time. So what was his plan? I'm going to get her out of where she's now out of my way to not do anything. What I don't understand what Wesker's plan is now with the new change of I got you out of prison just to screw you over again. Just so then you can be a thorn in my side.
I don't know what Dr. Isaac's plan is either, because so Alice is now just kind of lone survivor roaming the countryside, and she comes across a Dr. Isaac who's like a crazy religious fanatic.
I love this version of Dr. Isaac, by the way.
He is fun. We kind of understand that the Dr. Isaac that she killed in the previous Resident Evil movie was just a clone, and then this one potentially might also be a clone, but he thinks he's real. And he's got like a cult of people who are roaming the countryside and killing people and I don't know what. And he's like, finally, Alice, I have you. But instead of keeping you or chaining you up or something, I'm going to chain you and drag you behind my vehicle in front of a zombie horde so you can then have a cool action scene and escape from me immediately.
Right.
And then meet back up with Claire and her new team of people that get picked off, you know, over the course of the film. And then we see the real Dr. Isaac, and he's still working with Wesker, who's giving orders to Red Queen, and they're still all in it together, it seems. And
It's hard.
Wesker says something like, the last time Alice walked out of our facility, I don't intend to make that mistake myself.
But he let her out of the
exactly
facility.
That's the thing. It's like, I'm not going to make the same mistake that I made.
Right.
Like, wait, you let her out on the whole thing was a trap. Like, it's what? Again, do you just think that he doesn't go back? Does he like never review his work so far?
No. So with the theme of all of these movies, and especially this last one, all of the different Weskers were clones. So one Albert Wesker wanted to help Alice get out in Resident Evil 5, but it was a different Wesker that was standing on the White House at the end of 5. No, I have no idea. I'm so full of shit right now. But it would make sense that that's what Paul W.S. Anderson thinks. And the fact that the main Dr. Isaacs, the quote-unquote real one, is the one that has all of the cool tech.
That's true. So cloning does pretty much explain any... okay, not any plot hole, but there are definitely things where you can just say, well, that was a clone.
Well, that's what Paul did in this series. He fell in love with the idea of clones. They are everywhere. It just got so annoying. Like every movie has clones in it.
I just don't remember
different use for clones and different ways to make the clones seem relevant. And by the sixth one, I'm done. I was so disappointing that the Alice reveal was the way it was. I'm like, this is.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. I just don't remember ever seeing an indication that Wesker was a clone.
Wesker is the only one that they never said clone for ever.
Exactly. So,
but I was just saying that as a joke. It was
okay.
I was retconning things.
No,
for
a second I was thinking like, wait a second, was there a point where Wesker seemingly died and then he was okay again?
In the helicopter.
That's true.
The helicopter flew right into a mountain.
Do you
he
think?
Came back.
Well,
he might.
I did not think that was a situation where Wesker died and then came back as a clone, because Alice also survives that crash. But I could see that explanation. I could see that, like, okay, that Wesker is dead.
And
in
then
the
she
helicopter
blew
crash.
his face off in the end of the fourth one.
Okay. So maybe that Wesker died in the opening we never saw because they didn't have budget for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
We'll just say that. It's all different Weskers.
But all right, good. So go. All right. So it's all different Weskers. But let's talk about the Alices. You're about to segue to that.
Okay. So, do we just want to do the big reveal?
Yeah, talk about the big reveal.
Okay, so the big reveal is Alice is... You were talking about Alice being a clone since the end of the second movie.
Well, and I had not seen this one. I had not seen this movie. This is the only one I had not seen.
And, but, I mean, your theory ended up being right, but still being wrong, because you thought it was the original Alice died in the second movie, and now this is one of the clones. Well, this is one of the clones, but it was quote-unquote the original clone of
the first
Alice,
clone of the original Alice.
who is actually named Alicia, who was the daughter of Dr. Marcus, which is why they had to retcon which doctor was the Red Queen's father, because, again, like you said, they probably couldn't get the actor who played Dr. Ashford in Resident Evil Apocalypse, right?
Yes.
Was that too?
Jared Harris. Yep.
So that's why they had to retcon the Red Queen, because the Red Queen's name is Alice, and she had a condition where she aged really quick. So she was a teenager and she looked 75. So Marcus comes up with a T-virus to change that effect, which obviously works, but then it has other complications. So he creates the Red Queen so he can, well, I guess his plan is to just torture himself by looking at what was his daughter in computer form at all times. And the original Alice, or Alicia, starts aging again at some point. Or this was just a long time ago. I couldn't tell either way. So now they made clones of that Alicia, just like they made clones of every single big umbrella person, because they were freezing them because of the zombie apocalypse that was getting started. But their T-virus, which they just knew was going to happen, apparently, because they were doing all of this well before any of this shit happened, because they obviously cloned Alicia to make the Alice to then protect the mansion above the hive, which then started the first movie. So Alice, which we've seen the whole time, is a clone of the Red Queen.
Yes.
In the form
of the person on whom the Red Queen is based.
Yes. In the form of what the Red Queen would have looked like if she would have aged normally and not quickly.
With the degenerative disease, yes.
And does that make sense to anyone? I mean, I know nobody listens to us, but if you are listening, did that make any sense? Because I'm like confusing myself explaining it, and I feel like I'm hitting step for step what they said in the movie.
So do you think that at the point when Dr. Isaacs, as part of his research with Alice, realized what he had, that is when he then goes to the board of directors of Umbrella and says, I have a great idea. I believe the world is ending because of political unrest and global warming. So why not instead bring it about on our own terms? And
I do think, now looking back at the movie, so obviously they kept hinting at the first agent or the first bite being in Japan, but obviously that was a
simulation.
That was a simulation that it did.
Every time we saw Tokyo, it was in simulation.
They show in this movie an incident that happened at some sea lodge. I forget what country they said it was, and they covered that up. But that was when they thought the T-virus was still working.
I thought that was just because he has to have like a pre-outbreak sequence at the beginning of every movie.
Yes.
It's just like a tick of his.
But if you want to put that in the chronological order, I believe that incident happens where the T-virus, which they thought was just fixing dead cells, then turned this little boy into a zombie. He kills everybody on this ski loft thing. And they cover that up, and I believe at that point, that's when Umbrella goes, all right, we're cloning everybody, and we're locking everybody down and going into cryosleep, because obviously the T-virus is out there, and we're not going to be able to hold it off for long. That is my guess.
So that would be kind of an obfuscation, because in that scene where Dr. Isaac makes his proposal, he does not acknowledge in any way that, like if he had said, we already let the T-virus out, we need to cover this up, and also deal with the ramifications of a genie out of the bottle that we can no longer put back in. That'd be one thing. But no, it is the generic, I just kind of, for whatever bizarre death cult philosophical reasons, have decided that we need to end the world, and the whole board agrees.
Right.
And the funniest thing to me, I really want your thoughts on this, because you already talked about how ridiculous the cloning relations, or how those connections work, and how the Red Queen is Alice, and the original, the founder, the board member, Alicia is Alice, and Alice is Alice.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous enough, but the funniest thing about it to me is not that, but it's the fact that, like, Wesker and Dr. Isaacs cannot get rid of Alicia because Alicia owns controlling interest in the stock of the company.
Like, that matters at this point.
So she just keeps, it's like, but I control 51% of Umbrella, so you have to listen to whatever I say. It's like, really? Really? Like, there are 4,000 humans that remain living on Earth. You are the last corporation. Who can, like, there's no stock market. What are you talking about?
It's so sad. It's hilarious. It's hilarious when you think about it. But I guarantee you, if the world went to shit in real life, there would be somebody out there going, you have to listen to me. I have 51% of Amazon.
It's so dumb. We haven't even talked. Okay, so the other big thing in this movie is this movie has a Deus Ex Machina for the whole series in the form of an antivirus. And once we learn that there's an antivirus, which is about, a third into the movie or whatever, the quest then becomes for Alice to break back into the Hive. It is the Hive, isn't it, or is it a different Umbrella facility?
It's the Hive in Raccoon City, which I will say we've been shitting all over Paul W.S. Anderson for retconning everything. At least Raccoon City had a big hole in it.
That's true. He did remember that. Yes.
I was curious about that the whole time when they said we have to go back to Raccoon City. And then I saw the giant hole, which then they were like, we have to go down there. I'm like, why don't you just go to the Arklay Mountains and go into the perfectly fine mansion?
Mm-hmm.
Because that didn't blow up in the first movie.
It is, of course, so you can bring back all the Hive favorites, which, by the way, at the end of this, when we do I'm
just saying as far as the entrance into the Hive. I was like, that's a way easier entrance.
I like the whole approach to the Hive, and when they're going through Raccoon City, it looks good.
Yeah, I will say the fight with the zombies when they were in the tower and they used all like the oil or the gas and the fire. Cool. That is a cool visual.
Yes.
That is a really good visual.
While we're talking positives, I will also say this in the 4K set of Resident Evil movies is the best looking one since the first one, because it is a true 4K. It is not a 2K upscale.
Oh, yeah.
So the number one, interestingly, Resident Evil and Resident Evil The Final Chapter are the two that are in native 4K, and they are thus the best. So visually, at least the print of it is extremely nice. And there are some cool shots. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, he still had, for a $40 million movie, he's using that money.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's not
just not on the battle he expected.
Just not on the stuff that he promised us he would be giving us. Yes. But, so yeah, there's an antidote, a zombie antidote, that all you have to do is basically expose it. Like, get it out of the Umbrella facility and crack it open in the air, and eventually it will spread around the earth and wipe out every last bit of T-virus that there is. And that's the thing that we're going to get. And it kind of turns into a just struggle for the vial and getting the vial out there. Mm-hmm. And coming to a crazy standoff like just outside the facility with the two Dr. Isaacs.
Which I like that scene
and their followers is great. When the clone Dr. Isaac realized that he is a clone in his denial, killing the real Dr. Isaac. Again, all the like major villains in this franchise die like complete chumps.
Yeah.
Like there is no big, knuckle drag out fight like at the end of the last movie where she fought Michelle Rodriguez. Michelle Rodriguez is a more imposing villain than any of these people. Or even the Dr. Isaac clone from a couple of movies ago was like a better Dr.
Yeah, big crazy monster thing.
Better Dr. Isaac than this one.
I'm still calling the clone Wesker that was on the ship.
Yep.
Where he threw the sunglasses. That was a better fight than Wesker getting hit by a door.
Yep, Wesker just gets smushed by a door, and that's how Wesker dies. The end.
Because they didn't say 100 times that the Red Queen could not hurt an Umbrella employee. but she could hurt other people.
You know what that scene
They
is?
said that
scene,
so many times.
That scene is a direct ripoff
of a lot. There's a lot of movies like that, but I want to hear what you got.
RoboCop.
Yeah.
It's the famous scene in RoboCop where basically RoboCop cannot take out the bad guy.
Yep.
As long as he is an employee of the corporation, but as soon as he is fired, it's the exact same scene. It's the same setup. It's everything.
100%.
It's basically the same joke. So that's how they take out Weskers with a RoboCop knockoff.
But you know what? I like RoboCop, so I'm cool with it.
Sure. That's a great scene in RoboCop's a fantastic movie. One of my all-time favorites.
We won't talk about the other two, but the first one, fantastic.
The second movie I don't like, but it does have one spectacular scene in it, and that's the scene where you see all the failed RoboCop 2 prototypes.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. Mm-hmm.
There's still funnies in the second one. The third one is just really sad. Like, not good sad.
I agree. Well, they were making a PG-rated movie.
True.
With ninjas and stuff in it.
That was their Turtles 2, because they had to...
Is it Turtles 2? Isn't 3 is the one where they go back in time?
3's horrible because they got rid of the Jim Henson puppets and they looked plastic. But I'm just saying the second one...
If I were to compare RoboCop 3 to a Turtles movie, I would compare it to Turtles 3.
But I'm just saying as far as the PG goes, I love Turtles 2. I think it is...
It's a good movie.
It's the second best. I love the first one for how dark it is. But the first one was too dark for parents. So then that's why in Turtles 2, they never use their weapons one time.
Weird.
Because the parents got upset. Which is why the opening scene is in a mall and they're using sausages and clowns and stuff.
Man. And to think that they started out as kind of an edgelordy parody comic with lots of violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then they ended up on Nickelodeon or wherever the first cartoon ended up. And
wasn't it basically like, I'm trying to think if it was like a commentary on Deadpool or tying into Deadpool, or if it was just a parody of the grimdark comics of the era.
I forget.
That was the era of like Rob Liefeld and all that stuff.
There is a documentary on Netflix that more looks at the toys.
Mm-hmm. The toys that made us?
And there's an episode on there about Turtles, and I remember they have many interviews with the comic directors, and it's really, really good.
Yeah, I've watched a couple of episodes. I think I watched the Lego one. Anyway.
We're going off topic because we don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
We've got to talk, though, about the fact that basically this movie gives us here is the thing that if you just fulfill this one very simple goal, you kind of solve the whole, it's the cure-all.
Yes, but the cure-all is supposed to kill Alice, but Paul can't kill his wife in the movie.
No. Well, I mean, he can. We see some brutal, this is, like, I don't know what weird fetishes he's into with Mila, but, we do see, like, decapitated Mila heads and stuff in this one.
Right.
Like, he goes kind of gory with the clone stuff. I mean, it was already, tossing, like, piles of his wife, in the garbage in the previous films, but now he's gotten really out there. Alice cannot die.
No, I have one fight question for you.
Yes.
Because I am still unsure myself whether I liked it or thought it was too over the top. When she is strung up from the bridge and then fights off the umbrella cops, is that a good fight or a stupid over the top fight? Where she starts like doing the rope gymnastics and is like she holds on to her leg to make herself spin and takes out the guys. Do you remember that fight?
Yeah, it was all right.
I haven't decided. I was like, this is the cool visual, but like my brain is just hating this movie, so I'm hating on this fight scene. And then afterwards, I'm like, I'm not sure if I liked it or hated it.
I liked it okay. I mean, it's not any more ridiculous than any of the stuff that Alice does in the other films.
It's true.
Even knowing it's so funny that, the whole... They even explained that the power-up that she supposedly got was a fake power-up. And they injected her with basically nothing in the last movie.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. I was like, so was that the fake out? Was Wesker was giving her powers back and we never saw them?
Yep. No, again, Paul W.S. Anderson just decided that, actually, it'd be better if you didn't have all those crazy powers in this. Because
I agree with.
Yes, it does make it a little bit more palpable. It makes it feel like there are... Here's the thing. It's never going to feel like there are stakes. So you can kind of do whatever. It doesn't matter how much you beef her up or power her down. You know that she's the chosen one and she's never going to lose. So who cares is kind of where I land on that, of whether she's powered up or down. I guess it's just my problem with when she was powered up is more that it was so inconsistent.
Yes.
Like she just had random powers when she needed them.
It's very true. But anyway, so the ending is she breaks the vial, saves the world, all the zombies die. I was really hoping that she would drop the vial and all the zombies would wake up and act normal for a minute.
That would have been funny.
It would have just been hilarious. But they all die. She acts like she's dead. But nope, she's alive and off on the hunt because...
The Red Queen explains...
that the virus got spread by planes and automobiles, and the antidote is spread by the wind. So that takes a while. So you need to go out and continue to kill things until, the wind finally gets there.
Yep. But she also explains that the antidote only killed the T-virus cells in her blood, but left the rest of her intact. So she's back to being a normal human, essentially.
Yeah.
But she's still riding off into the sunset. Since, it's not an instant, even though it's basically a cure-all, the fact that it's going to take a few years means that she gets to ride into the sunset and be a cool zombie apocalypse survivor for a few more years.
Do you think he set up this ending just in case he could come up with a seventh idea?
I don't know. I mean, it still feels like the series is winding down, regardless. Do you think he's just trying to leave a sliver of an opening?
Maybe.
Just in case?
Just in case.
He's so willing to retcon himself that it doesn't even matter. Even if he hadn't done that ending and said, like, oh, it's going to take 5 or 6 years for this to happen, he could have just come back in the next movie and said, oh, when they said that this antidote worked, they were lying. And that'd be that.
Right?
That's the level of screenwriting we're talking about here. I'm not saying that you can't have characters who are not telling the truth.
Or all you could say is, well, the antidote worked, but it only stayed in that crater.
Well, none of it feels purposeful is my problem.
Right.
When things turn out to have been misinformation, it doesn't feel like it's something that was carefully seeded so you could have a cool twist. It feels like, whoops, I wrote myself into a corner. I have to now write myself out of it. And that's this entire series. Oh, and we forgot to mention, speaking of this entire series, I think in the last movie, I talked about how when Alice comments on the Red Queen saying the "you're all going to die down here" line, by saying like, yeah, I heard that before, how that was emblematic of all of Resident Evil.
They do it again.
They do it again. They subvert the trope.
And we haven't even talked about the laser thing showing up again.
Oh, yes. So this actually, I have this on my list of stuff, which is at the end of this, when we're doing our roundup, I want us to vote on which movie has the best laser sequence.
I can't even remember which one did what. This one was the worst because it never even goes to the grid.
That's true. Well, if it did, she would not be able to dodge it.
Yeah. I like the visual of it being super dusty and the lasers undustifying some spots, but.
Did you like that this time the Red Queen is telling the Umbrella, like the heads of Umbrella, that you're all going to die down here?
Right. At least it was a different take. I also love that the only two things we saw from the original Hive were the laser room and the room right outside of it. Everything else has changed.
Yeah, that's what I was like for a moment thinking, wait, was it the Hive?
Yeah, it was the original Hive, but...
they've come back to the Hive before and it was totally redesigned. So maybe Umbrella just completely redesigns all their facilities.
Right.
All the time.
All right, sir.
Yes.
I need a rating.
Well, I think this is by far the worst and laziest of all of these. I am incredibly angry at it because I feel like I've sat through, all of these movies in good faith, wanting to like them, wanting to give them a chance, wanting to reevaluate my view of them, and this last one was like the whole reason where I said, okay, there's the one I haven't seen, which is the final one, which I've heard terrible things about, but, it could be funny to suffer through this. And we've just been building up to it. I've been looking forward to it the whole time because I'm just like, okay, how can he possibly resolve any of this stuff after the movies we've already seen? And of course the answer is he doesn't. Of course the answer is he doesn't even try.
Correct.
And it just, he's got some balls. It takes some balls as a director to just say, I know that my audience cares so little, Or I know that my audience isn't even going to remember who the Doctor was in the second one of these because I know they haven't rewatched any of them since they came out in theaters.
Right.
I mean, that honestly, like a lot of this stuff, when I saw these in theaters, of course, I told you up front that, like, dude, these movies do not care about continuity. But still, a lot of the continuity errors that jumped out at me on this viewing of them for our podcast, I didn't notice the first time because a couple of years had passed between movies.
Right.
And you just don't remember exactly, and you give it the benefit of the doubt to some degree, and then you don't care enough to look into it and, you know, go on IMDb and be like, wait a minute, that's not the dad of the Red Queen.
Well, that's why the Resident Evils never had numbers. They aren't just direct sequels, sir. They're reimaginings.
Yeah, even just trying to watch them in order is a challenge because you can't tell. So, yeah, for me, this is by far the biggest waste of time, the worst thing we've done on the show so far. I'm going to give this a 1.
Ooh, the first 1 in Chapter Select history.
Yep.
I love it.
How about you, sir?
I'm not going to hate it as bad, but I'm going to hate it pretty bad. I'm giving it a 2.5. I was close to a 2, but I do think the 5th movie is worse than this one, but it's not by much.
I don't agree.
At least this one attempted to tie up stories. The 5th one was completely pointless. Even before getting retconned in the 6th movie. I think it's because I am the Resident Evil fan of this podcast. I was more pissed off that they just went, oh, we're in the 5th one and we haven't used Ada, Leon, or Barrett yet. So here they all come in the same truck.
The 5th one actually showed some promise where it was setting up something that looked cool. And you came out of that movie theater thinking, wow, the next one's going to be awesome.
Well, we saw where that came, and I gave that a 2. Anyways.
I think this is worse. I think the fact that this completely fails to pay off the promises of the last movie makes this worse than the last movie.
But you and I are actually pretty close in our rankings as far as putting them in order. I just need 2 questions from you.
Okay.
I was looking at our numbers, and there were
Are there some that have the same scores?
Somehow, and it's only because of this last one where I was actually looking at it when I came up with my number. I didn't have any of the same number. I would have if I didn't look, because I would have given the final chapter probably a 2. But I just wanted to set it where I could rank it easier. You have 2 ties.
Okay.
So I want you to tell me which one was better, Resident Evil Apocalypse, which was the 2nd movie, or Resident Evil Retribution, which was the 5th movie.
Oh, God.
So Nemesis or the Underground Cities?
I think Resident Evil Apocalypse is a lot better. Actually, I'm now thinking, why did I rate those the same? I mean, I guess Apocalypse is stylistically worse. Like, it is so music video and so incoherent at times. But I just hate the setting. I just hate the underground cities and all the regurgitation and all the the plot was starting to fall apart with Apocalypse.
Quickly.
But it had not completely fallen apart yet.
Right.
I think Apocalypse is better.
All right. And then your last one that you had a tie, the original Resident Evil or Resident Evil Extinction, which was the desert one.
The third one, the Russell Mulcahy one.
Yes.
Well, the Russell Mulcahy one is a lot better directed. However, it's also way more boring, I think, than the first Resident Evil movie. The first Resident Evil movie is like semi-entertaining relative to the other ones. So I'm going to go with the first one.
Okay. So our rankings, and this makes me laugh because you and I have different tastes in a lot of things, and that's why this podcast works so well, because we can bounce things off. But our rankings are identical, except I liked 6 more than 5. Well, excuse me, I hated 5 more than 6, and you hated 6 more than 5. The rest of our rankings are the same. We would both agree that Resident Evil Afterlife, which was the fourth one. The 4th movie, the top of the building and the boat and stuff, is the best
the first
of the
3D
series.
One.
Yes, is the best of the series, followed by the original, followed by Extinction, then Apocalypse, and then you and I flip on whether Retribution or the final chapter is the worst one. I will say also, looking at it real quick. You gave the highest and lowest scores in the series. Obviously, you gave Final Chapter a 1, but you gave Resident Evil Afterlife a 5.5, which was our highest score for any of these.
Yep.
My highest was a 5 for Resident Evil Afterlife, and I gave a 2 for Resident Evil Retribution. So there you go. The best Resident Evil movie is barely above a 5.
I just think for Afterlife, what does it for me is that sequence where Claire is fighting the giant axe guy in the shower. I think that's what does it. That's why the high rating. Yeah.
I just like the return to form a little bit. And her losing her powers and stuff. I think that's why I like that one the best.
Oh, I mean, that's when you mentioned that, I'm just like, maybe I rated it too high. Because I hate that part. I hate when they depower her. It's so stupid.
Well, they shouldn't have powered her in the first place.
They shouldn't have powered her to begin with, exactly.
All right. We have made it.
Yes.
We are done with Resident Evil movies, even though I love Resident Evil, until the new versions come out.
That's not
and we are done with Paul W.S. Anderson.
No, well, hang on.
What?
All right. Firstly, we'll have to do Monster Hunter. Secondly, I have here on my shelf Resident Evil 3 CG movie collection.
Oh, wait, those are better. I've only seen one, but those are better.
Resident Evil Vendetta, Resident Evil Damnation, Resident Evil Degeneration.
Okay.
So we'll have to get to those at some point.
But at least we're done with Paul W.S. Anderson for a while, right?
Monster Hunter.
No.
And Mortal Kombat.
There's more?
Oh, yes.
But we're taking a break, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can... Well, okay, so here's the thing. I know I promised you a good movie, and you're going to get a good movie soon. But looking at our release schedule...
Yeah.
Around the time that this episode airs is when Monster Hunter comes out on 4K. So I figure it'd be foolish not to just get Monster Hunter out of the way while it's fresh and relevant in the public eye.
So I have to watch another Paul W.S. Anderson movie again?
Yes, but this one based on a video game franchise that you don't care about.
Okay. Okay, so in 2 weeks... we're going to watch another Paul W.S. Anderson movie. It came out last year, right? Last December?
This year, I think. Or was it technically December?
I think it was possible December when it came out.
It's possible that it had a limited theatrical release.
A couple months ago.
Okay.
Yep,
it's technically a 2020 film.
So there you go. We will watch Monster Hunter on the next chapter select at the movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you like us talking about video games, next week we are going to start Dark Cloud, the old PS2 game, and we'll see what we do there. I know I asked you this last week, but have you ever played Dark Cloud before?
I have not. I'm completely unfamiliar.
Good. Perfect. I have, but it's been many, many years, and I remember getting to the final boss and getting stuck. So it'll be interesting. It was an entertaining game. I'm very curious how you feel about it, because there are things in it that I think you're going to dislike, and there's things in it that I think you're going to like. And I'm curious which will outweigh the other. So that'll be next week. And then in 2 weeks, we go down that old Paul W.S. Anderson train with Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And then
we'll be transported to another world in the first Paul W.S. Anderson isekai.
And then from there, who knows? But that is Jens. You can check him out at Aperture Silence. I'm Randy. You can check me out at Randy Isbell. You can check us both out at chapter_select. But until next time, we will see you in the next chapter.